Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey there, island dreamers, locals, and anyone craving a slice of paradise. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time, to the Fun in Key West podcast, where the vibe is always laid back, the stories are salty, and the drinks, well, they're definitely frozen. I'm your host, Michele O'Connor, your unofficial tour guide to the Conch Republic. Whether you're planning your first trip, your 5th trip, or you're just daydreaming about trading the cubicle for the ocean breeze, you are in the right place. Here's the deal. This podcast is your insider's guide to all things Key West. We're talking where to eat, hello, conch fritters and key lime pie. Where to drink, spoiler alert, there will be rum. Where to stay, and all the quirky, wonderful things that make Key West the one-of-a-kind paradise we all love. Plus, we'll keep you up to date on the latest happenings, festivals, events, maybe even the occasional Hemingway lookalike sighting. And just to keep things spicy, we'll be bringing on some amazing guests now and then, locals, business owners, and people who know the island like the back of their sandy hand. So grab your flip-flops, pour yourself a cold one, and let's escape to the island state of mind together, whether you're tuning in from your hammock or your commute, while wishing it was a hammock. We've got all the Key West goodness coming your way. Thanks for being here. It's going to be a lot of fun in Key West. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of Historic Marker Monday. Get ready for a tale of resilience, faith, and a little bit of island ingenuity as we dive into the story of historic marker number 55, the Old Stone Church. Imagine a church built around another church, surviving hurricanes, yellow fever, and even sitting atop a cemetery. Yep, you heard that right. So grab your walking shoes, your curiosity, and maybe a glass of key lime pie on the rocks, because that's a thing. It's going to be a fun one.
Welcome to Fun in Key West, where every day feels like a mini fest. Grab a drink, take it slow. We'll show you where the locals go. Food, fun, and stories to tell. Hidden gems you know so well. Your Key West experts here to say it's fun in Key West every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Fun in Key West podcast, and I am so glad that you are here. I'm going to be checking what I'm working on here, but let me know if you are here because I want to do a shout out and say, hey, how you doing? It is Historic Marker Monday, and as always, this is what we do. We go in and we talk about those historic markers that we see all the time as you're wandering around Key West. And today we are going to be talking about a really fun one. This is historic marker number 55. And imagine this. There is a church in Key West that was actually built around another church. Long story. Let's get into it. So we are actually standing. So picture this. You're on Eaton and Simonton and Elizabeth. And there you will find the Old Stone Church. That's the United Methodist Church. But it's lovingly called the Old Stone Church. And it has survived hurricanes. It has survived yellow fever. It has survived fires. And it actually might be sitting on a cemetery, believe it or not. So this is the oldest Methodist church in Southeast Florida. And it was built from the island itself, thus the Old Stone. And this is a story of faith and resilience and a little bit of island ingenuity. So let me set the stage.
So it's the early 1800s, and Key West is a remote coral island. Much like today, right? It's a remote coral island. And it sits between the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. And it's a melting pot. You've got shipwreckers, you've got Bahamians, you have Cuban expatriates, you have fishermen and pirates and shipwreck survivors, and a whole host of people that are actually in Key West. And you've got a lot of challenges. You have a yellow fever outbreak, you have devastating fires, you have hurricanes. And it's when you come into the 1930s, of course, Key West goes into bankruptcy and it has to be taken over. But through all this chaos, one thing stayed steady, and that was the faith of the people. So the first sermon, and I've got my notes here. In 1832, 2 Methodist missionaries arrived by schooner, and there was no church building. There was no pews, there was no stained glass, there was nothing pretty to go sit in and have church on every Sunday. But so the worship for this congregation was held in the house of Samuel Kemp, who was a Bahamian settler. And for 12 years, they held the meetings and the church services in Samuel's house. It's a tight-knit, it was a growing community, and so it went from a living room sermon to actually a church. And eventually, this church wanted to make the church a little bit more permanent, and so they went about building a church at first. And so the first structure was a wooden building, and that was located over on Eaton and William. And then that one sustained damage and burned. The second structure was on Caroline Street, and that one was also devastated. And then you end up with the third structure, which was built in 1846, right where the current structure is. And the second structure was actually destroyed in the hurricane. And from some of the notes that I found, the church was allowed to be rebuilt in 1846 with those. The 1846 structure was destroyed by the hurricane. And in 1847, they received the insurance proceeds to help rebuild a small structure. So you end up with this small wooden structure where it is today. And they said, you know what, we're going to do with what we have. And it was a small wooden structure. And so it was formed and became the official location of the Methodist Church. Now here's where things get really interesting. The congregation wanted to rebuild and put a structure up that would not be susceptible to fire and to hurricanes. They had had enough, and they were like, you know what, we don't want to have to keep rebuilding this church. So they hired an architect named William Kerr. So in steps William Kerr. And he's a Union Army engineer turned builder. And let's see, my notes say he was commissioned around 1870 to build the current church. And he decided, and the congregation said, you know what, this is going to make a whole lot more sense if we make it out of coral rock. And we're going to make it out of the coral rock that we're going to quarry out of the island. And so they began to dig directly on the church grounds, and they dug up the coral rock. And they built the new church around the existing wooden structure. And so if you think about it, you're attending church, you're attending in this little wooden church, and then a quarry is, made and put into bricks, and then you build it around this church. And then the roof goes on in 1884, and then what they do is they slowly dismantle the wooden church that's inside, carry it out of the front door, and what was left was the new church made out of old stone that was built. So imagine you're sitting in church, and one day you're realizing that this church that I'm sitting in is actually going to get carried out the front door, and the one that's being built outside around this is going to be the new church. But what was really interesting is the story doesn't stop there either. So the hole that they dug on the property where they quarried out the rock, they lined it and then allowed that to fill up with rainwater, so it became a cistern for not only the church, but the community and those around that needed fresh water, ship stocking in Key West and all of that. So the church just didn't serve souls, it actually served and the thirst and brought water to the people. What was interesting, as the church moved forward and they were doing some excavation around the church in the 1950s, they discovered that the church was actually built on a small cemetery. And there's a tombstone still that you can see over on the Simonton side. It's a little eerie, but you know what? That's Key West, and that's the way the world works half the time, right? So you had all of these congregations that were brought together, and it started in a small home in Samuel's living room, and then it grew into the church that it is today. And today, the church is still an active church. So if you practice the Methodist faith, you can stop by and, see one of their services. And what's interesting is some of the descendants of Samuel Kemp still attend that Methodist church today. So it is at 600 Eaton Street, and it's at the corner of Simonton and Elizabeth, and that's in Old Town Key West. So when you're wandering around and you see that historic marker, number 55, that is the Old Stone Church. And it's the Old Stone Church because when they dug up the stone, the coral rock, that became the Old Stone. So you had the missionaries show up, and today you have the church. That's what's so interesting about all of these historic buildings and historic sites in Key West as you walk around. You never know the story that's behind there. And so be sure to stop and read those historic markers. You can also, like I'm going to always tell you, you can hop over to FunInKeyWest.com and check out our walking tour. The historic markers are free. It's a do it on your own pace walking tour. Be sure to check out some of the other locations around town and get to some of the inside backstory on some of those markers. And while you're over there, sign up for our newsletter, because we actually send out a newsletter every week, and it has a trivia question in it. And if you get it right, you get to be in a drawing for a Fun in Key West swag box every month. And so we are starting, this is May, and we are starting a new month with new entries going in. And I always appreciate all of the responses that I get from our community. So come join us. Be part of what we're doing over there. Sign up for our newsletter. Be part of all the fun and the trivia. I am Michelle with Fun in Key West, and thank you so much for joining me for another very fun episode of Historic Marker Monday. And be sure to stay tuned to a lot more that we're working on, and we'll talk to you later. Bye. Wow, what a story, right? From humble beginnings in a Bahamian settler's living room to a coral rock masterpiece that stood the test of time, the Old Stone Church is a testament to the spirit of Key West. Next time you're wandering down Eaton Street, take a moment to soak in the history and maybe say hi to the ghosts of the past while you're at it. Don't forget to check out our free walking tour at FunInKeyWest.com, where you can explore more historic markers at your own pace. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter and check out our book club. Thanks for tuning in to Historic Marker Monday. I'm Michelle with Fun in Key West, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep having fun in Key West.